Hello and welcome to an episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name's Jacob and today got another unboxing for you guys. Well, it's not really in a box, but instead we got this clumpy package that's you can feel a bunch of bubble wrap and it's just covered in thin plastic. So typical packaging for a bunch of stuff that you typically get from China, particularly from like AliExpress. So I got a suspicious feeling I know what's in here, but I'm not quite going to say it until I actually open this one up. So let's get right into it. So let's see what we got. First of all, get rid of this plastic covering the front of this. Yep, got a lot of bubble wrap in here, all just taped up. I mean, it's a good way of packaging things, it works. Hopefully I'm not cutting through anything important, but I really doubt it because I can pretty much see through this bubble wrap to an extent. Can already smell a very plasticky smell coming out of this, but it might just be, you know, the bubble wrap. We'll see. Oh, looky here. We got a spine. We got a spine poking through. That is good. Okay, I'm confident enough that I know what this is to start telling you guys about it. I was scrolling through AliExpress recently. If you guys aren't familiar with AliExpress, they're basically a site where you can buy direct from China. You can buy all sorts of crap from there. I've bought many a bootleg figure, actually some knockoff instruments as well and other things. And this popped up. A brand new bootleg figure or a third-party figure that is yet to be determined. And it appears to be a third-party or a bootleg copy of the Art Spirits Hyper Solid Godzilla 2019 figure. And I just had to get it. It wasn't necessarily the cheapest of bootleg figures, but for the size of figure and for what the quality as it appeared in the photos, seemed legit. Seemed pretty good. Ooh. And we're actually starting to get a pretty good look at the figure. And so far so good. I'm seeing some detailing here, this foot here. Detail-wise, already looking actually quite nice. This is quite promising. Okay. Interesting. The reason I jumped on this in particular, aside from it just kind of looking objectively kind of nice, is those hyper-modeling figures are actually bloody expensive for what they are and the size of the figure. Whoa. Okay. Interesting. For one thing about this one that really differentiates it from the hyper solid figure. Sorry I keep saying hyper modeling, because hyper modeling is the like little mini figures. So I actually got the Art Spirits hyper modeling set here, which are actually just miniatures of the same thing. So I keep confusing the two. But the Hyper Solid has a different face. This one has a modified face, if you can see that there. So it's actually got these long teeth and this weird, like, venom tongue. It's really weird. Oh yeah, and the eyes are made bigger and kind of weird. But, all things considered, this is not a bad figure. No. Interesting. So, team of prototyping. It's got some stuff in Japanese, and it says Godzilla and Gojira on this one. And interesting. Team of prototyping. Anyway, take a look at this, guys. Hold on. Ooh. I think they might have put him in here while the paint wasn't exactly dry. He feels a little sticky in some areas, and there's actually some bits of brown paint that look like they kind of come off on the bubble wrap. So I think this guy was pretty much finished and posted right away. So that's really odd. Also, the postage on this guy actually wasn't too long. I think he arrived within a week or two at most. Interesting. Take a good look at him. He's not looking bad, is he? Especially the hands. The hands are really nice in this thing. Look at those claws. These are legit sharp claws. This isn't like a semi-sharp sculpt or nothing. This is, like, these are legit talons. I really like that. Now, paint-wise, this is the standard grey variant, but there's a few different versions. There's ones with blue on his spines, and there's ones where he's like the burning Godzilla variant. And actually, I've seen photos of that from, I think, a collector in China sent me some photos over Instagram, and that one actually looks pretty nice. It looks really cool, the burning effect. So I might be tempted to one day probably get one of those. I don't know. These, again, for a bootleg, these aren't necessarily cheap. But for what you're getting, it's not a bad price. I think this is actually much bigger than the real hypermodeling series figure, because that one looked pretty damn small, which is one of the reasons I never picked up any of those hypermodeling figures, or hypersolid. Sorry, I keep confusing them. This is the hypermodeling figure. So this is actually it's actually the exact same sculpt as the bigger hyper solid figure. This is the hyper modeling. They released a small bunch of assorted kaiju in this scale, and this is the pretty much identical sculpt to the big one, I think. And if we can, compare the two, we can see they look really similar. The main difference, of course, is the head, and also a bit of the angle of the tail, but that's not too hard to kind of manipulate, because you can bend this if you really put your mind to it. So that might have, it's hard to say whether this is an exact copy or bootleg because of that. But some of the details, like, let's have a look, like the legs here, they in particular, they look really identical. Yeah, like all this sculpt work across the legs here on these two is definitely the same. So they definitely borrowed the sculpt from this thing, or the bigger variant of it at least. And they did change some stuff. There's definitely some stuff that's different. But even the exact sculpt of the lines on his dorsal spines, they're the same. So some people have been saying that, no, this is a complete third-party figure. It's definitely not. I'm just looking at this, at the exact details, and they're identical but just blown up bigger on this thing. Apart from some stuff like the posture of this hand. This one, he's got the hand kind of more down. This guy, he's got his hand raised, poised up a little bit more, as opposed to sort of palm facing down. So there's a minor difference there. Yeah, of course the mouth has been modified. That's a big part of it. The mouth has been modified. And the angle of the tail. In fact, the tail is a little shorter, I think, in proportion than on this guy here. I'm not sure, again, what it's like on the official, slightly larger Hyper Solid series figure. I think that one would scale up about this tall, give or take. I think that's about how big that one is. A bit bigger than a Bandai vinyl. But this one, this is decently sized. This is like 25 centimeter scale. X plus scale is kind of whereabouts this guy stands. I actually have the 25 centimeter scale X plus of this particular Godzilla just offhand, and this one is actually, they made it really big. So this is the Large Monster Series 2019 Godzilla, and this is actually close to the 30 centimeter scale. So this gives you an idea of just how big this thing is. That's, I think, how much did I spend on this thing? Like 80 bucks. Give or take, and that's Australian. So for you guys in America, that's actually considerably less. And for something this detailed, and I will add, this thing is solid. This guy is clearly made of a solid plastic, so he feels completely solid. He's not hollow. He's heavy. That's really cool. So compared to like a hollow vinyl figure like this guy here, look at that. Not bad. These ones are bloody expensive. And I think he'll actually scale even better with the Ichibansho figure. So here we go. So this is the Ichiban Show figure. This is a Yuji Sakai sculpt. I adore this thing. I think, aside from some of the shitty paintwork on his mouth, this is one of the best Legendary Pictures Godzillas on the market. So this is the Godzilla vs. Kong variant. It's identical to the Godzilla King of the Monsters one pretty much. So if we bring them together, you can see they scale up pretty damn close. Pretty damn close, don't they? Yeah, look at that. They're almost neck to neck, the same height. There's some differences. This guy has a slightly bigger head. This one is honestly a bit less detailed. The details are more smoothed on him. But they're not bad at all. The scaling on him, especially on his legs and his arms, is really nice. The spines on him, they are smoothed over. The detailing on them is a lot more smooth and broad and bigger, more expressive, how would you put it, lines through them, compared to the really painstakingly detailed version on the Yuji Sakai figure. So I'll kind of try and show you that. You can see, if you look at the detail work on these spines here, they're just so intricate and so exact and have really fine, really rough, stone-like details. It's beautifully done. And just all over this thing is just textured all over. It's really, really cool. And you have this one, which these spines look awesome. They've got great texturing to them, but it's much more broad and expressive. So it's a very different sort of approach, but it's cool in its own sort of way. Then again, we have that questionable face. That's really kind of where this figure is a downside, because it looks like a cheap, like, children's toy, the face, while everything else on this thing actually is really good. Again, those hands look great. Got great detailing down his legs, in particular, the scaling on his chest there, that looks really good. Really nice. Really, really cool. His feet there. Again, I'll show you under his feet, because this is actually kind of interesting, because a lot of times these bootlegs of third-party figures, they don't put anything here. But we actually have something that says Godzilla there in English, and then in the corner it says Gojira, going downwards in Japanese. Interesting. And here, what does this say? So, team of prototyping, and then it has something written in, I'm guessing Japanese. That does look like Japanese in the bottom, but it looks like it's almost in 3 different scripts, saying 3 different things, something like that. Team of prototyping. Interesting. Doesn't even say made in China on this guy, which is odd. Then we got the tail. The detailing's a bit smoother on the plates of his tail, but in all honesty, the detailing is no lesser on this thing. It's pretty much at the same level as, say, the big NECA Godzilla 2014 figure. I have that one, but I'm probably not going to bring him in just now, because he's a little tricky to pull out, but detailing's not bad. It's just much more smooth across his tail. And there's even some like hairs and weird stuff going on here, and it does feel a little sticky just at the tip of the tail. I think the paint there might not have cured properly, and there's a bit of fuzz, but you know, nothing too bad. Got lovely spines down his tail. Yeah, really, really interesting. Look at this side. Yeah, I was looking at like every one of these scales, comparing it to the little guy. The little guy over here. So, yeah, you can judge for yourself, but I swear these things are near identical. The sculpt is actually a bit sharper on the smaller one here than actually the bigger one, which is kind of funny on the scaling. But that's also kind of to be expected with a more, a bootleg figure, or sort of a knockoff figure. I did actually get a set of bootleg hyper modeling figures. So this is the Godzilla from that set, just to kind of compare with this thing, because these are both copies that I got from AliExpress of these same sort of sculpts. This one, they actually kept the teeth the same because this is so small that changing it would be preposterous. But I think they might have done the modifications to this guy to avoid copyright issues, for what it's worth, or to be accused of directly copying the exact hyper solid figure, though this thing's so close to it anyway that I don't even know. It's kind of bizarre to me. I am tempted to actually go in and resculpt areas of the face, like cut away some bits and then get some epoxy putty, refill those, maybe do a nice paint job on them, because the paint's, again, this is the most plain variant, and this Godzilla in particular doesn't have the most exciting paint scheme to begin with as far as Godzilla's go. His spines are gray, his body is charcoal gray, he's just gray. So this guy, all they did was they put a wash of like a lighter tan color that you can see peeking in some areas between the scales and stuff like that. But overall, he's a pretty flat gray color with some paintwork on his face, some pink in his gums. The teeth are done in like a lighter gray, and then he's got those orangey red eyes with black pupils. So that's all the real paintwork we have on him. So it's fairly accurate, apart from the bulbous teeth and the tongue and the eyes. Interesting. I dig this thing. I think it's really cool. I'm one of my actual favorite bootleg figures or third-party figures at the moment. I think this one's really nice for a knockoff figure. So before I close the review, I'm just going to bring in a few other figures. So we've already seen the Ichibancho figure. These ones scale really closely, and I will say they do have bootlegs of this one, the Ichibancho figure, all over AliExpress, and they actually look decent. Surprisingly, they actually look decent, because I think the paintwork on this guy is a mixed bag. It's kind of rough and kind of shitty looking in some places, again, like the face. And these bootlegs actually tend to be pretty decent with actually keeping the sculpt nice and sharp and looking really close to the originals, from what I've noticed. They usually lack the most paint-wise. And this one actually looks pretty close, at least going by the photos that I've seen, to the bootlegs. So I don't know, I don't really have the funds on me to warrant buying a second one of these as a bootleg, even though it is fairly cheap for what it is, because this is the the real deal one. This is kind of pricey, but the bootleg is a lot less. But I don't have the funds on me to really warrant that. Although I am tempted to, so we'll see. But it would be really cool to actually compare the two, because I'm really curious. Because yeah, this guy here has some stuff about him that looks kind of bootleggy, and with the photos I've seen of the actual bootlegs, they look pretty much the same, give or take a little bit. I don't know. So compare. We had those two compared. You can bring in the Monster Arts figure here, scale-wise. This one, of course, is much bigger. Look at that. So he's a really nice chunky size, which I really appreciate in a figure like this. And of course, I wish I had the original Hyper Solid series figure to compare to this thing, because I think it's a little shorter from what I've seen in reviews, and there's actually barely any reviews of that thing on the internet. I think it's because it's, again, so expensive for the size of figure that barely anyone actually ended up getting it, at least out of the reviewers that I follow. So let's kind of look at his size, actually. Not the most accurate ruler, because it's like this floppy thing, but he's just a bit over 9 inches, like 9.5 inches. Yeah, about 9 inches tall. So he stands about 9 inches. Again, floppy ruler, so take my measurements for a grain of salt. And I'm doing this kind of freehand. Centimeters, I'd say he stands 23 centimeters tall. Yeah, not a bad size for a figure like this. And again, remember, this guy is just heavy. He's just solid, which is really cool. Some more hairs on him, which is weird, but they could be brush hairs too, so don't really know. Another figure I did want to bring in is the Sega figure. So this is the Sega Godzilla 2019 figure. They also released a 2021 variant, the Godzilla vs. Kong variant, which is the same exact sculpt, but with slightly poorer QC controls on it, I think. When I did that review, it had some issues, but this is the 2019 variant. And this is also basically made of the same material. This is a solid figure, feels really similar to this, and detailing-wise and paint-wise, really close. But it's just smaller and done in this awkward pose with Godzilla's legs bent like he's going to the toilet. It's weird, but for what it is, it's actually a beautiful figure. It's really well made. But yeah, detailing-wise, it's actually really close. It has about the same level of sharpness to the detailing in about the same areas, except for the spines, which are much better on this third-party hyper-solid figure or bootleg. I mean, it is a bootleg. Let's face it. It's clearly using the same mold, at least partially, for the or at least majoritarily. It's not a word. You guys get my point. It's using the majority of the sculpt on here is identical to the Hypersolid series original figure, from what I can tell at least. At least it's identical to this little guy here. Really, really cool. I'm curious about the other variants. Like I said, the Burning Godzilla version, from what I've seen, actually looks really nice. I don't know if it necessarily looks like it's burning, but it just looks really pretty, especially the spines on it. The way they painted it, it looked really good. So tempted to get it. Again, I'm really tight on funds at the moment, so probably not. Probably shouldn't be spending my money on bootlegs and saving up for some of the more fancy figures that I'm after. Just to see if I have any sort of complaints about this thing, aside from, again, the face, there is a little spot up here where the spine is kind of not pushed in ideally properly into its slot here. So yeah, where the spines have been like glued in, it's kind of raised just a touch there. That's my only kind of nitpick. Overall, this thing does have quite minimal seam lines. Like, you got the seam lines around the jaw. There's some for the tail. As you saw, I had to pop in the tail. It went in really, really easily and really seamlessly because this guy's a segmented tail. It's actually segmented in like separate bits in a few places, I think, like at the base of the tail here and one here. Yeah, that's all of them. So this bit of the tail is where it popped in. So it was easy to do. But other than that, it's just got a seam around his leg here, and that's barely visible. So yeah, overall, I'm giving this guy a pretty strong recommend for what it is. It's actually a really cool third-party figure. And it does come in a boxed variant for like an extra $5. I didn't get that because I don't have room for more boxes, and as cool as it would have been to show off the box to you, there's photos of the boxes on AliExpress. If you guys are after one of these, you can see the box, and if you, for some weird reason, want the box, go for it. But in this instance, I decided to opt to get the slightly cheaper variant, and yeah, and this is as cheap as I could find them. And I'm, yeah, pleasantly surprised with this thing. It's really cool, really hefty, and overall decently made. So that is it for this unboxing video. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you see any more cool bootlegs on the market or any other things I should look into. And I hope to see you in one of my future videos, but until then, may all your vinyl be a radiated vinyl. Over and out.